Good morning. There is some amazing stuff in the community right now, in the broader community, the YouTube community. So I've enjoyed, I think Ivan Mike has made, I'm calling them the D20 topic videos. I think he's done 3 or 4 D20 videos in the last 5 days, maybe 4 videos in 5 days. Very good. And again, Ivan is better at short videos. I'm not. There's no such thing as brevity in my entire demeanor. And I tend to talk things out, so I tend to go longer. But again, they're short videos, anywhere from I think 5 to maybe I think you might even have a 12-minute video in there, which is for Ivan is getting long, right? For me, 12 is just the beginning. I'm kidding. And this morning, the reason I'm is I've been reflecting back on our Dark Age of Man session the other night, reflecting about that recap, my player recap, where I discuss improvisational gaming and what that looks like. And I've talked about that before with Yes and Yes But and Brian, Stochastic Agency and I. But I also this morning woke up and was lucky enough to see that Anthony and Brian had a great conversation. It related to the Call of Cthulhu series of sessions. And they're discussing, I noticed in the thumbnail, improv and oh God, forgive me now, but I thought, this is amazing because I just was talking about improv in my recap video. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And I was going to listen anyway, but it drew my attention that I wanted to listen while getting some work done here. And it was a great conversation. I'll put the link to that video. And again, I think most people who probably subscribe to our channel subscribe to Anthony or maybe even Brian's Stochastic Agency channel. So you're probably aware of it anyway. But a great conversation about this continued process that I think we're all in a way exploring in many ways, right? The writing of our book was dealing with some of these ideas that Gail and I have been kind of banging around for 3 years. And how do we put this in writing? And how do we do this thing, right? How do we talk about giving players control and what is agency, et cetera, et cetera? And they have a great conversation, including these topics, right? It's outstanding. So great place to go. I like Ivan says, though, that's not what this video is about. This video is about a film I watched yesterday. British Film Institute, 1944 black and white film. And those of you who don't know, I'm a huge cinema fan, and I happen to love black and white cinema, classic cinema. And that is not just classic films. I'll watch. I mean, if it's available, if it's a 1942 B movie, I'll give it a watch, right? Because so many of those films were well made, even though they were B movie. And B movie meant it fell under the 90-minute threshold to be a feature film. So B films, where you'd go to the Saturday night movie with your girlfriend, and you would pay your ticket, and you would get a cartoon, you would get a B film, and then you would get the A film. And the B film had to generally be about 70 to 80 minutes. And then you would have your 90-minute or 2-hour feature film, and you would also get your cartoons, right, beforehand, or something like that. So that's where the term B film comes from. It's where actors and directors and writers got to hone their craft and maybe get the shot at the big ticket, right? So for those who don't know, like Cary Grant, he had a lot of B films before he got the nod to to be a leading man in a big Hollywood production. So they cut their teeth there. They see how they go. They see if there's chemistry, and they might have a career, they might not. So anyway, this is a 1944 British Film Institute. Um, it is called They Came to the City. And this is interesting. And it made me think, I mean, the movie's not about this, but it made me think about this in relation to our hobby. So I'm going to quickly give an idea. So They Came to the City it's a fantasy film about two British a British soldier and his girlfriend, fiance, in a park arguing about the future, imagining what the world's going to be like post World War II, right? As we wrap this up, the man is kind of negative and arguing that it's not going to be any better, it's not going to be different. And the girl arguing, it is. The guy comes along, an older gentleman with a pipe. He sits down with him and says, "You're having an argument in the park, broad daylight." And they're like, "Yeah, we're arguing about this, about what the future is going to look like." And he sits down and he poses what we eventually watched, the movie, right? He poses to this young couple a scenario. Imagine there are 9 people that are transported away. Okay. And then it fades and we come up into the actual seeing of these characters in their real world situation. An older woman who's scrubbing a floor. And we meet a married couple on a train, and we meet We meet a woman who's literally in the middle of quitting her job, throwing her apron down as a waitress, and she's telling her boss, fuck off, and she's leaving, she's quitting her job. And we meet a sailor in the bowels of a ship who's fighting with his his foreman on the boat. And so we meet these people. Some of them are bitter, some of them are positive, some of them are indifferent, some of them are excited, whatever, right? We meet these 9 personalities, and they all exit the scene through a door, and that door, they step into this place, the city. And they arrive in this nondescript giant fortress of angular stairways and angular pillars of, and it's almost like it's floating in the clouds. They don't know where they're at. There's no other people. There's no signs. There's no, right. And they all kind of wander in there, and they meet each other, and they have these great dialogue. They finally work their way to the top, and they see a door that's shut. They can't get it open, and they argue and debate. And the older woman, points out that door will open when it's ready to open. And sure enough, within a few hours, the door opens. And then they all debate, what do we do? And they slowly, one by one, will go down the stairs, and they'll see below this beautiful city, right? And we never see the city. They never show us the city. And by the way, there's a reference early in the film to the Walt Whitman poem, right, about the dream, a dream of the city. So early in the film, they hint that this is a direct correlation to Walt Whitman's poem. Okay. And so they all go down to the city, and we learn about the city as they come back up from this stairwell into the city. And some come up, grow angry, frustrated, grotesque by it, and will not go back. They will not stay. And then some come up, it's utopia, right? And they cannot believe it. And it's this amazing experience, and they want to stay, or they will stay. And then there's the main couple. I would argue the main couple, right? The young man that was from the bowels of the ship, and the waitress who quit her job. Both are looking for something. She had, describes in her to the bartender when she quits her job, how I'll just move to another city. I've done this a million times. She goes everywhere. She can't find happiness. And we meet the sailor who's been to every port, and he's been to every shining city on the hill. And every time you get off the boat into the city, it stinks, and it's riddled with all the problems of every city, right? So we meet these people, right? We meet these personalities, and the married couple, and the whatever, right? And some choose to stay. The husband, the wife hates the city, hates the experience, can't believe it. I want to go home. The husband loves it, wants to stay, and but this husband sacrifices himself to go back with his wife. The older woman stays, there's no question, and the sailor even refers to her as Ma, which is kind of like, this is the mother. And we learned in her beginning piece of the film that she works 2 jobs and goes home and takes care of her family. And she says, no, they can take care of themselves now. I'm staying. So we get why they reject it, this utopian perfect city that we as an audience never get to see. We only hear through what makes them angry about it, or what makes them excited about it, or what makes them content with it. The sailor comes up and says, this is amazing. This is the first city I've ever had that is the shining beacon of utopian city right on the hill. And the waitress, of course, comes up. The sailor comes up to see everybody at the top and see those who leave, and to talk to some, and he tries to talk to the husband, and he warns the wife, are you going to allow him? And he already knew the wife was not going to let him go. So, we see that happen. So I'm being all over the place here. I'm really telling the story, but I want to get to something else. The gist of it is, the sailor stays. He stays to the point that, and we learn that they can go home, but when the sun goes down, that door shuts. You can't go back. So you got to be in, or you got to be out. And the sailor stays, and he stays, and he stays until the door begins to shut, waiting for the waitress to come back up. She races up. She squeezes through the door as the door shuts, and they have this, the door hasn't quite shut yet. I think it's shutting. It's like slowly shutting, and they discussed this, and he said, it's the greatest thing I've ever experienced. It is what I want. It's what I've always wanted. And she, of course, does. And she was, let's stay. And he says, no, I can't stay. I won't stay. I've seen what it can be. I know what it can be. And because I now know what it can be, I've seen it. I know what it can be. It's my duty to go back, and it's my duty to try to help where I come from achieve this thing, be better, you know. And remember, this is Britain during the war, or right on the edge of the war. And of course, Britain was a class hierarchy, social, strict class hierarchy structure. So, you know, they're referring to how are these working men going to come back and go back into that class structure, right there? The Brits post World War II had some, and post World War I, really. After World War I, I mean, you've asked hundreds of thousands of millions of your soldiers to go off and die and fight for your country, and they're going to come back and go back to being servants, right? They're going to go, right? So the Brits dealt with this really in the first war, right? Second war, again, was a different in the sense that women were very, very much involved too, right? So we got these two young people. How are they, what society are these two young people going to build post-war? They're disgruntled, they're unsatisfied, they don't think there's a future, they see this city, and they both agree to stay together, and they both agreed, yes, we should go back and try to help that world achieve these things. And it was just a great film. It's just a great film, right? And you know, it tells the tale of who we are as people, right? I mean, there are those people who don't want to see change, right? So I was thinking about how does this relate to me and my hobby and who I was when I came to YouTube 12 years ago. I was this guy who understood his role in the hierarchy of what he learned, the D20, for instance. And you don't want to, everything else you see is kind of like, that's no way, right? And then, you know, or you see the glimmer of the perfect, I'll say the perfect session or the perfect game or the perfect experience. And when you have that, right, you want to find a way to incorporate that into, or to maybe change that or to evolve that, right? As a human, you'd like to evolve or change or experience, but some people don't, man. There's absolutely no way. This is it, and it'll never ever be different and never ever change for me. And that other stuff, that kind of thing disgusts me, or vice versa, right? So it's just very cool, and it just made me think about because I don't have that kind of outlook on life, right? I don't have that outlook that even every city and all humankind is what it is, right? But it made me think about that in relationship to, in a way, my experience in gaming, right? That perfect OSR. It's like, oh man, I wish I had written this OSR. And then what that OSR felt like at the table with it, you know, in a certain frame of mind, how you play that or how you do that thing. Is it habitual, or is it experienced with strangers that are saying, no, we do it a little differently, and or is it completely foreign to me? Whoa, that's not how I play D&D, you know. And you know, to even the next phase of different styles of role-playing games, what the games ask of you, what they're trying to achieve in genre, or they're trying to achieve through GM role, or they're trying to achieve through mechanics or storytelling or narrative control, whatever the case may be. And I had to share it because it's a great movie, period. It's just a good movie to see, especially if you put it in the context of 1944 Britain, right? And the subject matter of what the world was like before the wars and what had to change as the working class, as they began to expect more for their dime, right? They're going to expect more for their life after seeing what they've seen and after witnessing that the world can't stay the way it was, or what we'll have another one of these things, right? Kind of thing. So it's just fascinating, but it made me think of that in conjunction with like the hobby, right? What happens when you step outside and you experience the thing, right? You won't even go into the city, or you'll go in and you'll read the way, no, I can see already this perfect utopian city. And it's going to reduce my hierarchy with the thing I am and the thing I know, right? It's going to reduce that role. So I'm not even gonna stay here, but for a few minutes, right? And then there's those that go, holy cow, I don't have to deal with all those the thing of the D20 that was that they hated, right? Again, the sailor. I've been to those ports, and from the boat, from the distance, as a sailor on the sea for 3 months, you can't wait to get there. From here, it looks like the glimmering city on the hill. It's gonna be wonderful, and it's a dump, and there's poverty and sick children, and there's still the poor and the homeless, and you know, so he had already been all over the world, and they all the same. That's all the same. They just look different. They speak a different language. It's all the same, right? So he certainly was a bitter young man, right? And I think about that in relationship to, let's say, those 9 personalities that exist in our hobby, for instance, and how would you perceive that new game that wasn't in your wheelhouse? How would you perceive those new ideas that aren't in your wheelhouse? would you adjust your gaming? Would you want to go back and say, I've seen something, let's share it. Maybe this could be even this D20 game could be better if, right? So I just thought it was fascinating. And it's just been a good conversation that I've seen, at least publicly. I'm not, again, I'm in Discord with some private groups, but we really don't discuss the theories of games. And we share game times and we share, stuff, but we don't discuss theory of gaming, etc. like that. I think there's a couple that do, and we've had some interesting dialogues. They always degrade. I'm in a Discord group, and you can put up a couple things, and invariably somebody's offended, and it degrades into a fight about stupid shit, like the D20 or whatever. You can't believe that these people must literally visit daily all those sites and have all those fights, and that's what they do. And you're like, really? Or is this, is this what you do? Right? And so they don't learn anything. They just have the same arguments over and over and over. They don't actually change. And the irony is they don't even perceive whether you have changed. I mean, I've got people who still think I'm the exact same guy, because I can still love and I can still appreciate and still want the experience of my D20. Doesn't mean I haven't changed and I don't do things differently. But it's interesting how that's also part of the dilemma, right? How do you go to a convention and experience the thing and then come home and say, whoa, guys, this is cool. I bought this game at a convention. I had a great session. I would like to sit down with my local group and try this. And all of them go, no, man, we only got 2 hours tonight for Pathfinder, and it's going to be Pathfinder. What a shitty place to be, right? And I think many people, that is their experience. They would like to, but they can't. There's no support among their group or their friends or their local, So you got the local friendly game store that has games all over the damn shelves, but seems like everybody's playing the same game, right? So what's the point, right? Which is why many of those stores don't survive, right? The brick and mortar stores won't survive because they're only buying so much stuff, right? When I was a kid, we bought TSR and Boot Hill and Paranoia, Traveler. We bought them all, right? We just didn't buy them all at once. We had to buy them as we got money. We trickled out. We might not play them, but we bought them all. We somehow we owned them all. We didn't just buy D&D, AD&D materials, right? Again, I had Chill, and I had, I can't remember the other game. There were D10 games, Chill, and there was one of them that they used D10, D100, a couple of D10s, and I'd never seen that really before. I think Star Frontiers used D100, right? But anyway, so it's fascinating, and just recently, Ivan just kind of looking at the math and the probabilities of the D20 and how it really functions and what it really achieves, so to speak, as a mechanic, as a dice, the math of it, right? To Dale and I's discussions about in character, as character, player agency, and our discussions about as a GM playing naive, right? Not deciding whether there is a shovel there or not a shovel. The player shouldn't make an assumption that there's a shovel there. But we're also saying to the GM, you don't decide there's a shovel there either. If a player says, I reach for the shovel, that's what luck's for. Oh, let's make a luck check and let's see if that shovel's here. What kind of shovel that might be. Leave it open for the players. And if it's not reaching outside to create a truth that invalidates a mystery, then we allow it, right? It wouldn't be a problem. Dale said, I look around for a horse to chase the kidnappers in session 1. No question. There's going to be a horse here in the village center. You're going to have to commandeer it, but there will be a horse. It became complicated when Sam came out and said, I'm doing the same. And I said, well, let's make a roll now, gentlemen, to see how many. And he had a critical failure. And I said, not only is there not another one readily available here, Dale, out of the corner of his eye, started to mount this and realized it was a mule and not a horse. So the critical failure turned this horse that I had said, of course there's going to be a horse around here. It turned his horse into a mule. And out of the corner of his eye, he was wrong. It's not a horse. Now Dale, it slowed down their response to chase the kidnappers, and it forced Dale to order soldiers to bring him horses. That became a fell forward, but nonetheless, it cost them time and energy to see some things. And I like that kind of gaming. Especially when I want to give players the ability to, when they see something, to act. What I don't want to see are players to make conclusions. I want to hear the yes and yes but. I want to hear confirmation of what other people have said and confirmation of what the GM has said. I don't want to hear you add something, especially to another character, that they did not say. We had one of these moments the other night, um, where there was the player described and handed it off, handed the hot potato off, and the other player then attributed something back to that character that they did not say happened. And that's a no-no. Just describe what you're doing now. Confirm it, yes, but this, yes, and this. Don't then put something upon the character they did not say they did. That's a no-no because it forces the other player to say no, stop, no, which then creates frustration because what one player is envisioning and attributing, he thinks, well, just hand that away. Let me have this. Just hand it. Don't worry about what I just said about your character. You can't ask players to allow you to say something about your character. You have to, it's going to force them to say, I didn't say I did that. That's not who my character is. And so we have to be careful what we want to attribute to another character, right? Accept what they've said and then talk about your character and what you see. Don't attribute something. And so those are the moments where you like, see that was one of those moments. So in improv, again, I don't want to talk about improv all day, but it's yes and yes, but, because when the minute we say no, the minute we pull the rug out of from somebody, it stops everything. It ends the thing. So the goal is to have open narrative. The goal is to speak in such a way that we can elicit information back from the other players or from the GM. If that has not yet been decided, that's ideal. If you do take liberty, instead of pulling the rug out, now we're going to have to break we're going to have to break some of that by asking for a roll, which is for some people going to break immersion by just interrupting to say, let's see if there's a horse here. Let's see if there's a crowbar here, right? So sometimes it's best to say I'm looking for a horse, right? As opposed to I'm taking a horse, right? And so these are things that are habitual and they're not a big deal. And in my tables, I'm pretty capable of playing anyway because it doesn't destroy why I'm in this hobby, and it certainly doesn't affect who I enjoy the hobby with. The people I want to play with, the people I enjoy the hobby with. So, but those are those moments you're like, wow, we're that close to almost a seamless shared narrative space, and then there's those moments where we go too far, we cross the line, or we say something about somebody's character that is not true, or we, whatever, and you think, okay, and we didn't, yes, I hear that clamor, and this is what I do, right? As opposed to redefining the clamor that was already described by the GM or the other player, right? The situation, right? I hear that, right? I hear that, but this is what I do, right? And that's ideal because nobody else then has to say no or stop the process of the shared space. And these are things that will come natural when we reflect on what frustrates us as players. So when I say something that somebody has to say no, I get frustrated because you've literally just broken my train of focus. But they have to say no because I went somewhere I wasn't supposed to go and I didn't realize it, right? And so you learn how we can communicate in such a way that no one ever has to say no. And the GM can facilitate and adjudicate the game based on some of these shared responsibilities. So in our game, we're actually asking, in a way, to share, be naive enough as a GM to not make up your mind about the scene. Don't make up your mind about everything. So when a player adds a little piece of detail to it, you don't have to pull the rope. You don't have to say, no, that ain't true, and pull the rug out and make them, and also by saying no, you arrest progress. But hopefully players won't go too far, right? So it's an interesting line we walk. But anyway, this was really a little long and probably the subject matters were a little all over the place. But anyway, I wanted to share what I'm seeing in the community and some of my ideas, but also I want to share, I thought that film was really good, and I couldn't help but think about it. What if the dream city, imagine what it would be like to have the dream session, the perfect session. And when you would you walk away from that table and go try to help teach that? Or would you shun that table because it's not the normal hierarchy of how you do things? Or would you, right, embrace it wholly and, right? Or would you be capable of saying, I've seen the light. Now can I help spread the light? And it was very cool, very cool. Anyway, all right, everybody out there, have a great day. Bye.